So this is Hightower Bikes live stream, and we're not really knowing what we're doing. But I was just reading this here on the 24, 26, 29 about tire pressures, and the guy posts a picture of his bike, asks about, hey, I weigh this much. What's the tire pressure, right? It's a good question. Jack says inflate to the max PSI list on the sidewall. Greg says once you get to a good tire pressure, it's not going to matter. I'd do 65, 70. It should be perfect. And I assume he's like looking at these tires. And the original poster comes back and says, yeah, 65 is max. In other words, 70 would be too much. So Chris Hampton said, as Jack said, the tire pressure of your tires will be written on the sidewall. No point in listening to advice. He's making that point. And Michael Wardle, the original poster, he gives a thumbs up. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to weigh in a little bit more here on the tire pressure. This is great about max and recommended, and in general, just my opinion. You want to roll a little bit under max, and you might ask, well, why? The max is the max, right? And you get different tire pressures with temperature and a bunch of other factors. So I would say, if your max is 65, 63 or whatever, but you're not trying to get 65.1, trying to stay under that number. And so that's just the first thing. And if you're hitting max, the reason why you're hitting max, and this is just my opinion, but if you're hitting max, the reason why you're hitting max is because you're going to be on the road, a very firm surface like concrete or asphalt. And the other thing is, that you're comfortable with the reduced traction of max tire pressure. So you might be saying, well, that you're going to get just as good a traction no matter your pressure. You might feel that way. Well, you don't. And the reason why is something called a tire patch. So when you inflate to max PSI, you're basically putting in so much air into your tire as to reduce the amount of rubber that is touching the road. And the main reason why you would do that, there's something called rolling resistance. All right, and I'm just going to look this up as I describe it. But basically, that's when the rubber deforms, it causes friction, it releases heat, and it slows you down. So the more tire pressure you have, the more rigid that rubber surface of your tire tread is, the less it's going to deform. And here it shows this area of deformation. So when you're doing max tire pressure, you're giving up a little bit of traction in effort to decrease the rolling resistance and have a more efficient ride. So if you're going a long distance on the road, you're not worried about crashing, you just want to get there as efficiently as possible. That's max tire pressure. Now, when would you want to be less than max tire pressure? There's lots of circumstances. Okay, so one that a lot of people bring up when they start talking about fat tire bikes is, it's called a beach cruiser. But if you're out there on Venice Beach and the beach is big, or Huntington Beach, and you got this giant beach, wouldn't it be nice to have a bike that will roll through the sand too, and not just the sidewalk, connecting the different beaches? And so people kind of know that a big fat tire, you can ride it in the sand, okay? But it's not just all or nothing, big sand, big tires. It also has to do with the size of the patch. How big that needs to be varies based on rider weight. Okay, so if you are a bigger rider on a bigger bike with bigger wheels, it makes sense that you're going to have a wider tire patch, and all proportionally constrained. So if you want that same BMX experience when you're an 85-pound rider on a 20-inch bike, and now you're a 170-pound rider, well, that's double. So you might have a bike that weighs twice as much, you weigh twice as much, and the ratio of those tire diameters is not going to be 2x, but it's going to be some ratio to achieve that weight. So you're not twice as tall, you're twice as heavy. The bike isn't twice as big, it's twice as heavy too. And so sometimes these things aren't obvious, but going back to why do you need a lower tire pressure? Traction is number one. Stability goes along with traction, but that larger tire patch, you might have a little bump or rock over here, but the patch is bigger than the rock, and so the rock is just absorbed into the deformation of the tire. So as you reduce the tire pressure, you reduce the need for shock absorbers, for example. So if you're riding a big BMX bike with a rigid frame and rigid forks, letting out a little bit of air is going to give you a more comfortable ride. Now it's just like a shock absorber, it's at the loss of energy. As you're cruising along, all that comfort comes at a cost, which means you're going to have to put more energy to keep going. So, all of this comes with experience, but if you're really trying to get your ride on and you got real firm tires, you're going to get your butt up off the seat and absorb some of the shock into your, knees and legs and forearms and whatnot as you're riding along. So, I just want to talk a little bit about this. Hopefully it's beneficial. If this works out, I'll do some more of this. I'm trying to start up this shop, Hightower Bikes, and a lot of why I'm a researcher. I'm not a bicycle guy. I've been doing research for years and years now, and I don't know what I have to bring to the table, but I thought I'd just give this a spin and see if I could pull it off without too much overhead. Thanks a lot, and this Hightower Bikes signing off.